wish to thank the organisers for the invitation to participate in this event. In the world of scientific publishing, 35 years is a long time. Anna and I met close to 4 decades ago. At the time, 2 colleagues and I were negotiating the founding of a journal on the topic of parallel computing. During these discussions at the publishers, we met with Einar. Some time later, Einar mentioned that he was planning to start his own publishing undertaking. This was towards the end of the 1980s. At the time, the financial outlook was rather subdued. It did not seem to be a good time to start a new business in a very competitive market. Today we witness the success that Einar achieved. I wish to sincerely congratulate you, Einar, together with the dedicated staff of iOS, for the magnificent organization you established. If we look back at what was achieved by Einar and iOS, it is perhaps a good idea to also look at the future. I must clarify that I am not a publisher. Thus my following remarks and views must be seen as those of a novice, but with some experience of interacting with publishers. I shall consider the following points. First, an introduction with some background experiences and comments on technology life cycles. Then my views on scientific publishing as it exists and where it could perhaps move in future. Let us now start with a short history as an introduction. I wish to start off with the first meeting of the International Parallel Computing Conference, PARCO, in 1983 in Berlin. At the conference, the publication of the Parallel Computing Journal, published by Elsevier, was announced. The aims with the conference, as well as with the journal, was to further research and development and technology transfer on all aspects of parallel computing. At the time, only a handful of conferences and workshops related to high-performance computing, HPC, existed in Europe. Conference activities were mainly covered by CONPAR, concentrating on architectures, VAP, concentrating on applications, mainly in physics, and PARCO, generally promoting parallel computing aspects. Parallel Computing Journal grew from 4 volumes to 12 volumes annually within a reasonably short period of time. The result of all these efforts was an increasing interest from researchers worldwide in the field of parallel computing. The attendance of the conferences increased with the result that a number of new conferences were started. This development resulted again in a fast increase in the number of papers submitted to the Parallel Computing Journal. In order to cope with this flood of submissions, a book series was started to accommodate proceedings and special topics. The first volume of this series was published in 1989. During the late 1990s, Elsevier changed its policy in that it started to focus more on the publication of journals and less on the handling of books. The end result was that the price per volume for the Advances in Parallel Computing book series increased to such an extent that fewer and fewer copies were sold. Eventually, iOS agreed to take over the publication of the book series, with volume 15 being the first published by iOS in 2008. Open access introduced a completely new approach to publication. This profoundly impacted marketing strategies, as books can be freely accessed. The publishing costs are paid by authors in advance. Recommendable here are the reasonable paper handling charges of iOS. In this section, I wish to make a few comments about the technology life cycle of parallel computing. Since the coming available of the first electronic computers, the problems solved with these machines became more and more complex. This resulted in a continuous demand for higher performance. To meet these demands, special hardware had to be developed. Such special hardware was very expensive, which again had the negative effect that the high costs prevented the widespread use of these machines. A potential solution of the cost problem is the use of standard computer components to build parallel computer systems. The question here is, can such architectures be used to solve complex problems? A number of test systems built proved that this is possible. The result of this was that manufacturers of processors started incorporating parallel concepts in their designs. General processors produced today are parallel systems. The result was that a shift of research and development work on parallel computing architectures and software development methods and tools moved from research establishments to manufacturers. This shift resulted in a drop of papers discussing fundamental aspects of parallel computing being submitted for publication in journals or books. In the previous section, we saw how the development of a technology from a new idea to becoming a mainstream technology can affect the papers that are submitted for publication. Let us now consider what scientific publishing actually involves. The classic approach to publishing can be described in 4 steps. Step 1 is the research that produces the results that can be published. Step 2 reviews these results and the publication to see whether it is acceptable. Step 3 is the publishing process, including the printing of a book. And step 4 is the marketing and distribution. The various steps in the publishing process are financed in different ways. Step 1, research, is usually financed by private companies or the public sector. Step 2, the review process, is done by reviewers who are usually not compensated. Step 3 is done by the publisher, who then hopes that he can recoup his investment in step 4, that is in marketing and distribution. During the 1990s, 2 developments led to serious criticisms of the sketched publishing procedures. On the one hand, a financial aspect was that the research was funded largely by the taxpayers. On the other hand, the finally published material had to be paid for by research funding. The depressed financial situation resulted in a reduction of available funds for universities and research institutions. On the other hand, due to the financial situation, pressure increased on researchers to produce more, that is, publish or die. The increasing number of publications resulted in increasing subscription costs. The final result was a reduction in the number of subscriptions or book orders by libraries. The pressure to reduce the number of subscriptions led to 2 different conflicting views. On the one hand, the librarians aim at having a representative collection of publications. Subscriptions are rarely cancelled, as the Brexit journal or book series. Researchers, on the other hand, need access to the material they need. Funds for new publications are restricted due to running commitments. This resulted in a situation that has no easy solution. Bulk contracts were introduced by publishers in an attempt to alleviate the situation. The situation that was sketched above with the classic publishing model was aggravated by another development, and that is an increasing number of new research fields opening up at a tremendous rate, making it very difficult for publishers to introduce new publications that cover all these new fields. The so-called hype cycle introduced by Gartner is nothing else than a graphical depiction of what I already mentioned when I discussed the technological life cycle. New inventions or implementations of existing technologies can result in a so-called new hype theme. That is a theme that is promoted as being fundamental for future progress. Excessive expectations are promoted, but these are usually, or very often then, not realized. Hype themes for themselves are not a problem. The real problem is that these hype themes often influence political decisions on investing funds for research and development. Inordinate amounts of funds are allotted for research on hype themes, with the result that there are reduced funds available for further research on existing technologies. Changing research and development environments result from, on the one hand, the maturity of technology, and on the other hand, emerging hype themes. Maturity of technology results in a shift from fundamental research to applications. This impacts the aims and scope of presently published journals or book series. Hype themes again place pressure on publishers to introduce new publications, which may be high-risk ventures due to the short life cycles of many hype themes. The classic publishing model cannot respond quickly to emerging new research fields. Open access publishing may be a good starting point for publishing research results from emerging fields quickly. Problems with open access is the publication costs must be reasonable, and the longevity of electronic material must be ensured. Let us consider a new publishing framework based on a so-called list of topics. The publishing policy of a publisher is steered by his list of topics. The LOT, or list of topics, describes and determines the publisher's aims and scope, basically his business plan. The LOT should be regularly updated, perhaps monthly, to include new emerging research fields. Topics that have lost their impact can be deleted from the LOT for new submissions. Note that there may be a separate LOT for archives. This brings a fundamental change to how publishing decisions are taken. The LOT replaces present publications focused on particular themes. Within the new framework, journals and book series don't exist. What could the publishing procedure be within such a new framework? Publishers accept papers submitted in electronic form for open access publication. Submissions must be according to standardized formats. Authors select the main fields of research from the list of topics. It should be a restricted selection and it must be prioritized. Submitted papers are classified as drafts initially, under review, reviewed and accepted or rejected. The reviewing of papers is done by editorial boards which are invited or appointed for each topic on the LOT. Comments from readers can form part of the review process, so it could also include an open review. The question arises how papers can be accessed. All submitted papers are registered and entered into a database. The status of each paper, draft, under review, etc. is stated. All papers are indexed according to the publisher's LOT, depending on the theme selected by the author, and the author's keywords. The question is whether keywords are still needed. The search or archive LOT includes all past topics deleted from the present LOT for submissions. Global search engines must have access to publishers' indexed databases. How the databases in which all the publications are stored are structured is up to the publisher. The creation of a large central publication database seems attractive. This is most probably impractical due to the varying lists of topics of different publishers and the complex management of such a database. Distributed databases catering for a publisher or a group of publishers may be preferred. The cost of setting up and running such a database would be similar to the present databases run by publishers. A question is how the publishing of papers within this new publishing framework could be financed. Authors pay for submitting a paper for open access publication. Submitted papers remain in the database and are accessible until rejected. Rejection does not result in a refund. Authors are thus animated to submit material with a good chance of being accepted. Libraries, research organizations, industries, etc. should fund the open access publication fees of authors. Their policies will automatically reduce the number of papers that may not be accepted. Now, publications are linked to the LOT. Volumes related to a journal or book series do not exist. Hard copies of volumes as such can thus not be produced. Persons or organizations interested in a hard copy of certain papers could copy a paper and print it, order a book with a selection of papers. It is up to a publisher whether such books on demand will be offered. In conclusion, we can assert that scientific publishing is facing fundamental changes in the way the published material is generated. Hopefully, the remarks made here will contribute to successfully coping with these changes. In particular, I wish to express my hope for a successful future of iOS within this changing world.